better than your currency. Splurging millions, buying houses like Monopoly. Fucking 9 to 5, man, the money is a joke to me. Buying cryptocurrency, my money in the privacy. I make it rain dollars.
Hey guys and girls, welcome to this week's episode of No BS with Birchy podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Birch, and this is the show unraveling the truth to the facade of the 21st century. We're now exiting the Matrix and waking up to motherfucking reality. And on that note, today I have a returning guest, which is Carolyn Brown from Blink Property in Queensland. Thanks for returning, Carolyn.
No worries. Great to be here.
I said last time that we had you on that I wanted to get you back because I know that your knowledge and understanding of the laws, they're continuously changing. As an investor, there's lots of things that we do that are very different that push up the rents and maximize returns. But a part of maximizing returns for investors, it's saving them from costs, and that's the other part of it, right? You can either save money or make money, and we try to save money and make money. And a lot of the times when people have to spend money as an investor is when they get into shit because they've done something wrong, they haven't had the I's dotted, the T's crossed, or followed policy and whatnot. Yeah. And I know it's ever changing. Like a little while ago, you had the smoke detectors. They used to be battery operated. Now everyone has to change it to hardwire, all these sorts of things. I guess if you could give us a bit of a rundown on just what you're seeing out there in the market and what's happening with laws, and there's stuff that people know, there's stuff that people don't know, and I guess maybe share like 5 to 10 different things that people could be doing to be compliant and up to making sure they're not getting sued, basically.
Yep. Okay. I think the main thing that's coming on board in Queensland is the minimum housing laws that's going to come about. So originally they said 1st of October this year. This morning when we watched a podcast with our REOQ and RTA, they said the 1st of September now. So they've brought it forward a little bit. It's basic common sense, a lot of it. I mean, you do have to have things like light shades in place, curtains. Some of our properties are small, for they're like aged care residentials, and they don't have cooktops, and they have to supply a cooktop in a property now. Okay. So there's a lot of little things like that need to come on board, but it shouldn't scare an owner. Like we can sort of work at this now and start planning ahead. We've got the time to do it, so it'll be a minimal cost split across the months rather than a screaming bill if it's needed. So I think just getting that on board, we need to make sure that we're proactive in that, because if it comes down to a point, the tenant can now spend 4 weeks of the owner's money if they want to do those repairs if they're not actioned by that owner. So they can take the owner to QCAT and lodge what they call a repair order. So it's better for the owner to come to us and say, let's go ahead with your plan and let's get that actioned. As long as we're making progress with it, that will prevent those tenants from spending their money and getting the cousin to put a cooktop in or something. So it's better when you're doing it. Like I guess if you're looking at one of those sort of aged care homes, or if you're looking at a holiday property, you can get those cooktop with the oven thing in it. You plug it in. It's like $200, $100, like, and you put the rent up as well at the same time while we're here, right? Yeah. Now you got cooking,
Now you got cooking. It's an extra $50 a week. We'll pay that cooktop over in a month.
Well, we've been working with some of our trades already just to make sure that, that we've got a good understanding, and our trades do too, because I mean, they're great, but they don't keep up to date with the laws. So we've sort of had chats about that in the office. The few that we need to get these cooktops installed in, they've come up with safety plates against the wall so they can't tip because they are for elderly people. They're going to do a bulk costing and get them done. So that'll save the owners money across all of them. So we're just working on things like that. So potentially it might be an outlay, but it's going to be cheaper if we work it as a group rather than just an individual each time. So we're trying to look at it as a whole rather than just one property.
Fantastic. And like with that, like I guess if we're improving a property and we're having to spend, sometimes people will sit there and be like, oh, fucking government, they're now making me, like I don't want to do this. They just keep taking, which government does do that. But as an investor, that's your opportunity, right? Like you see constantly, you go to the shops and, they've got a new checkout. There's no staff at the checkout. There's a new checkout and your food's gone up in value. And it's like, well, my food's gone up. I'm paying more and I'm doing the staff's job by scanning all the stuff in my shopping bag. Suddenly, but it gives you the opportunity at these points to go, okay, well, I'm putting this in here. Now I can push up the rent. I can do these things. So it's, I guess structuring it right. Yeah. What other sort of laws, like we had the smoke detector laws a few years ago? Any?
And now
Yeah.
the pets is going to be a big thing up here, because anyone can apply for a pet now, and the owner has 14 days that they have to respond, yes or no. If it's a body corp issue, like if it comes back to that it's in a complex, then we're better off turning around and saying no straight away, which refers it back to the tenant. The tenant then has to apply to body corp themselves. That can take a lot of time, as you know what body corps are like. Anywhere from 3 months up to a year in Queensland, depending on how often they meet. They're not going to do a special meeting just for someone's dog to be approved. But then if it is knocked back by body corp, they can still go back and say that they need it for anxiety, which seems to be the new thing. Everyone's got an anxiety pet now. So it is something that we have to be mindful of, but then we just have to make sure that we put in our special conditions regarding the pet being in place, and that they're doing their pest control and everything, instead of the owner paying for it, that they're looking after it.
Okay, cool. It's always try and stick clear of pets, because
I know.
What other things is there that people should be aware of, or could be aware of, that could hurt them, cost them money?
I think one of the things that I think some people have got false understanding on is ending a fixed term lease through sale. They've come out and said that it's 2 months. It's not actually 2 months. You have to give 2 months notice prior to end of a tenancy that's in place. So if the property is not selling, if it sells in April and the lease is up until October, they're not leaving until October. You can offer a compensation to have that tenant move, but that comes up to the tenant whether they want to, if they want to dig their heels in or they like living there. You just got to be mindful of that you can't actually just ask them to move.
So be careful with your leases.
Exactly. And make sure you've got a lease in place. And if you haven't got a lease in place, get one in now and give them notice. Otherwise, give them notice to leave, so you don't have that problem.
And I hear that in Queensland, like if your property is not on a fixed term lease, like it makes it harder for insurance. Is that something that's...
It does, because you've got no start and end date. It's still a contract, so you've got no fixed term contract as such. So it makes it harder to get your insurance through, because they want to see a copy of that lease. Well, I haven't got one. Or why were they in the property? It makes it it's a grey area for insurance companies at the moment. So anyone that hasn't signed a lease, with the new legislation is, if you're offered a lease and you haven't signed it within 5 days, we can retract it.
Okay.
So we're sort of sticking with that we're saying sign it, or we're going to retract it. If you don't like it because of the rent increase, you'll have to vacate. So all leases are offered with a notice to leave as well now, just to make sure that that owner's covered. So they've got to end that contract.
Beautiful. Okay, that's cool. A question that I've got as well, Carolyn, while I got you, is what is like, I remember back in when Corona first started, that people were like, oh, I don't want to pay my rent and all those sorts of things. They were trying to get rent, and the arrears. And a lot of people were scared like arrears would be rising and all these sorts of things. But I remember all the processes that we put in place at the time, we didn't even have one that broke their lease or, not paid their rent and all that. And I remember seeing like people that I know that had like pulled the wool over their real estate agent's eyes, right? And they're like, oh, I can't pay rent. And they got like 2 years or 18 months worth of rent where they didn't pay it, and they renegotiated it down and all that sort of stuff. And we had zero of them. Rent arrears, which is very important, because a lot of people think when they're buying an investment property, like, what happens if my tenant gets arrears? What happens if they don't pay? What is the process that you follow? What is the chance of someone not paying their rent and, someone being out of pocket? How can you minimize that?
I mean, it happens. People's lives change and things do happen. I mean, it's normal, but we monitor them closely. Day 3, we're on the phone calling to see what's going on, why their rent's not here. Some people said, oh, that's a bit soon. I said, well, no, because it's 3 days now, the owner hasn't been paid. So we're on the phone day 3, day 4, day 5. They get an email as well, and then back on the phone. So we monitor it. We let the owners know when it gets to day 8, because that's when we can breach the tenant for being in arrears. So at day 8, they get a remedy breach sent out to them. And we also send the owner an email so they don't get a shock, by a statement or something that they haven't received that rent. Then they've got 7 days to remedy that. If they fail to do so, they're issued a Form 12, a notice to leave. Again, it's another 7 days. Unfortunately, you got to wait. And then, failing that, if you haven't been able to mitigate between the tenant and getting some money in for that owner, then we speak to the owner and say, look, we're not getting any satisfaction. We're going to lodge a QCAT.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. And then how long would that process from the day that they don't pay the rent to the day that the tenant's like taken from the property and removed? What would that take?
It can take a little while because QCAT takes about 8 weeks. But as long as we're following legislation and we're doing everything by the book, we're covered under the landlord insurance for loss of rent anyway. So it's not an issue there. It's not ideal, but it's not an issue.
So so people that might be putting off being an investor because they're scared of not getting paid their rent, if you've got landlord insurance, which is like $500, $300, $400, whatever a year, and with that landlord insurance, if you follow all the processes and have it all documented by correct, so that would take like 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, something like that. The tenant leaves the property, then you can lodge that with the insurance and then be able to get the loss of rent for the loss of rent period. So you're not really out of pocket. It's just that you've got 3 months that you may not have received the rent until you get it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, correct. Which isn't always ideal, but I mean, they know they're going to recoup their funds back. And as I say, you just got to make sure, the agency's following protocol and making sure they're sticking with legislation.
Yeah. And put all the processes in place to make sure that they're, you mean business, because there's agents here that get walked over. Like I remember at the time, like when there was acknowledged lockdowns and all these things, like I was like, how do we minimize that risk? What things can we put in place? And I was even talking to like debt collecting agencies, right, of how do they enforce things and how can they put protocols in? And we sort of adopted some of those things at the time to ensure that, we're in front of the curve and we're holding people accountable for, So that's cool.
I think agencies in general jumped the gun. I mean, I must admit, not blink, but a lot of agencies did jump the gun and were putting a lot of pauses on mortgages to help tenants out, which wasn't really ideal because a lot of them didn't show cause what they were supposed to, that they actually couldn't, they were out of work. So many people were working from home and still earning their income, but they just on the heartstrings of the property manager. And if they were silly enough to not get the show cause and go with it, then the owner's the one that has to get the penalties further down when the mortgage is back in place again. So
and if the mortgages that weren't paid at that time, it wasn't like as if the mortgage was never to be paid. They just added into people's mortgages, so the owner has to pay for that period of time, but the tenant was like given all this rent free and stuff. I'd seen so much of it out there in the marketplace. It's just poor management from bad real estate officers that have given that sort of
definitely. Thank God that's over.
Wait for the next thing. With other things that you're seeing, and what other changes do you think owners should be aware of in the current climate?
That's a good one. I think just being mindful. Like I think it's up to us really. It's not the owners. I think it's up to the staff just to make sure that they're educating owners, because only too often do we get owners saying, I just want to increase the rent because my rates have gone up. And I'm like, the tenant probably wants to increase their income too. But I mean, it's not realistic. You can't it doesn't happen overnight. They just have to be mindful if there's a lease in place.
Maybe if we can look at, say, the top 3 or 5 sort of different, if you think about like the rents that you've increased recently, you said you just pushed one up beforehand at $170 a week.
170 a week,
What would be other ones that, like in the last week or a month or whatever, that you've put up that are,
we had another one with what I call a stale tenant, had been in there a long time, and we needed to get them out, and that tenant had actually had the owner's number and was on the heartstrings of the owner about how the partner had moved on and they were stuck with the rent, and they were undervalued so much. I mean, we ended up putting up $80 a week and he was happy with that. The tenant said, I'm going to have to break lease and leave. So we ended up getting $120 a week for that one, because that's where it should have been. He was trying to keep the price down for that tenant. And I said, it's not. Why did you buy the investment? Was it to home people or was it to actually make money? So he said, I know, just felt bad, but it needed to happen.
120. Beautiful. Any others that you think of that are notable?
Yeah, we do quite a lot of $70, like $70 a week. We've been doing quite a lot of those on the Gold Coast, and we've got some new ones in Brisbane that we've, quite nice sort of new builds, and we've put those up quite a bit, probably about 45. So they've been great.
I was actually looking at one that was on social media the other day. It was $385 a week. And I was like, if I was drinking a coffee, I don't drink coffee, but if I was drinking coffee, I would have spat it all over my phone, right? It was like $385 a week. I remember like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when we bought the property, it was like $230, $240 a week. And like, that's a big jump that, these properties that we're picking up for like 150K are now getting $385 a week. If someone had 10 of those properties, they could be retired now from it. And it comes down to the strength of you guys being the property manager to be able to enforce and, command those sort of prices on the rents, which it's not you guys, it's the actual market, and it's
Exactly.
you guys being ahead of the market and not reactive. You're being proactive on that front. So
yeah, definitely. And that's why I just said to the girls, you just got to, keep up your game and make sure that you're watching what's going on in your own property. And if there's repairs done and maintenance or any sort of renovations, it's definitely adding value. So they put notes in the system all the time to make sure that they're mindful of that and look at the reviews when they're due.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And you've said a few times the Gold Coast, like, because you're looking after Queensland there, like, whether it be is it just the Gold Coast you're seeing the rents go up, or are you seeing, like, if we go to the other extreme, like literally we're in every neighbourhood, every, step up the coast we're there. Like, if you go to, say, Cairns, which is the other extreme, what would the market still be increasing there? Like, what's happening in all the other markets?
We've got a unit block up there, which the owner will know who I'm talking about. A block of 5 up in Wonga Beach. They're at 170 a week at the moment, but they'll be going up to 250. We've already sent the increases out. They're not bad little, they're not bad little units, just been mismanaged in the past. Yeah, they should never have been at that. So.
I actually know the block, and I had the chat with the owner. I was like, mate, make sure you push them up. So that's like $80 a week times 5. That's $400 a week. That's 20 grand a year. The difference between you managing it or another agent managing it is 20 grand a year. Like, that's half an average salary. That's just. And
most of the ones in Warree, Bowen, I know an owner there as well that was a little bit desperate for increases, and I looked at it and we raised all the rents there, so they've all gone up. She's wrapped. They were needed, but so it's good. It's good to make them sort of reach their potential and be where they should be, I suppose.
Awesome. Well, on that note, Carolyn, how would if someone's got a property and they want to contact you guys, like, do you have, like, what would be the best email address, or like, is there a hotline that people can call you on there or contact you?
I think the best email would just if they want to get the property over would be the BDMQLD at blinkproperty.com.au, and it'll come through to Peter. He'll have a look at it and he'll speak to me, and we'll see what we can do to help the owner and get them on board. And
Fantastic. And within the office, like, if there's ever any sort of issues, like, because of the size of your team, you've got a very large team there. If you ever have something that someone's unsure of, you've always got a lot of experience there to collaborate and workshop ideas and strategies and outcomes and whatnot. So we do. We've
got a really good team here, and as I said to you before, we get together every Friday morning, probably for about an hour. If there's anything that anyone's having trouble with, they'll reach out and say, whether they're up in Rockhampton or Gladstone, whatever property manager it is, and we'll just nut it out so they can react and get it sorted quickly. So
awesome. Cool. Well, Carolyn, I appreciate all your help with what you do. All our owners love, the results that are coming, and especially as you keep increasing their cash flows, they're all going to keep you in the Christmas card list and send you bottles of wine and stuff and fill up that shelf behind you.
I know, I moved them.
But
the team's doing a great job.
Sorry, yeah.
I said the team's doing a really great job,
Awesome. We're only as good as that we have around us. So thanks for what you do. You do a great job at managing the team. Keep up the good work. And if anyone does want to, get a second opinion on their property, my view is, if you own a property and Blink's not managing it, and you're under rented, you should be running it past us, even if it's just to get a bit of second opinion. If you bring your property to us, we'd love it. If you don't, and you've still got your own property manager, what other real estate office out there will give you advice to go back to your property manager with? So come to us, ask the question. Even you go back to your own property manager and ask them to do the job. And if they can't do it, then obviously know that we can do it. Thanks a lot for viewing, everyone. If you do like the show, make sure you give us a thumbs up, like us, share us, add your family and friends. You can follow us every Thursday. The podcast is out on Google Play, Apple Play, Spotify, and YouTube. We'll catch up soon. Have a great day, and bye for now. Thanks, Carolyn.
Like Bilal said, man, we stuck in the matrix. This my advice, don't care if you take it. The dollar back to die, soon to be hyperinflated. This my 2 cents, don't care if you save it. Joint be decentralized, and you will see you been lied to the whole time, and it's the irony, cause they do the exact opposite. You become a slave to the system, enough your money, all they do is profit. There's no conspiracy theory, you better hear me. Crypto will set you free before the system does. I don't care if you do or you don't, but what I'm saying is the truth to the reason you choke. I've never been a failure, excuse my behavior. Keep talking, haters doing me a favor. They all telling lies, I know what they been telling you. I'm the opposite, the Donald Trump of Australia. It's amazing, here for the taking. My time is never wasted, just getting wasted. These girls say I'm really breathtaking. I can't help it if I really misbehaving.